Hey guys, tonight we ride straight into a vineyard with a god on the back of a tiger. No saddle, no warning, just a wine-soaked smile, an ivy crown, and a leopard skin cloak flapping in the wind. The villagers look up from their grapevines, eyes squinting against the golden sun, and you can already tell this is not going to be a normal day. This is Dionysus, and Dionysus doesn't do normal. He doesn't walk into town like a merchant. He doesn't descend like a thunderbolt. He arrives surreal, smiling, and mildly terrifying. He rides a beast no one here has ever seen before, through rows of ripe grapes, as if he owns not just the land, but joy itself. And you're right there beside him, feet dragging through the dust, wondering what part of this is a dream, and what part might be your last conscious memory. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. It's like a little map of sleepy minds slowly switching off. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. We begin not in the vineyard, not yet, but in a palace high above mortal concern, where gods are supposed to be perfect. But one wasn't. One came out twice. First from his mother, who died in flames, and then, again, from Zeus's thigh. Yeah, his thigh. That god was Dionysus, and the weirdness, it started before he could walk. He wasn't born of logic. He was born of heat, panic, accident, and desire. A mortal woman, Semele, dared to love Zeus. She asked to see him in his true divine form. He obliged. She combusted, and from her ashes, Zeus sewed her unborn child into his thigh like a fireproof pocket. 9 months later, boom, god of wine, god of madness, god of 1,000 contradictions. You can almost hear the other Olympians scoff. We're stuck with this guy. But he was divine, and divine chaos. That's hard to ignore. From the very beginning, Dionysus confused people. Was he gentle? Was he vengeful? Was he man? Woman? Both? Neither. Historians still argue whether he came from Thrace, India, or somewhere even older. His cult spread like wildfire, carried by dancers, whispers, and the strange promise of joy so powerful it could unmake you. You don't follow Dionysus. You get swept up. He grows older fast, disguised as a girl by nervous nymphs, hidden in mountain caves to protect him from Hera's wrath. He learns from satyrs, learns music, Vineyard, ritual, learns that pain and pleasure are twinned, and somewhere along the line, he realizes the world doesn't need another lightning bolt or war cry. It needs release, so he gives it in goblets, in ecstasy, in madness wrapped in laughter. But it starts with a walk. No, a ride into a vineyard where grapes grow straight, neat, obedient, and he doesn't like that, not one bit. The thing about being born twice is you remember things differently. You don't just see the world. You feel its contradictions humming beneath the surface. Dionysus, still young by God's standards, doesn't walk like a boy. He drifts like a melody no one asked for. His eyes shimmer with a kind of tired joy, as if he already knows how this story ends, but insists you dance through it anyway. You follow. The vineyard is ahead, neat and proper, every vine bound to trellis, every cluster trimmed just so. But Dionysus, he's astride a tiger, not a lion, not a stately horse, a tiger. Its coat gleams in the sun, orange and gold and impossible. Greece doesn't have tigers. The locals whisper that he brought it from the east, from India, from dreams. Historians still argue whether the tiger was real, symbolic, or just another part of Dionysus's walking metaphor parade. But in myth, the tiger is always real. Its tail flicks like punctuation behind the god's casual chaos. He arrives like thunder wrapped in silk. The villagers, pruning grapevines, stare. A few drop tools, a few kneel, a few back away slowly, because they've heard the stories of what happens when you forget joy. Because this vineyard, it's beautiful, but quiet. No music, no ritual, no celebration. Just rows of grapes and the creak of harvest baskets. The wine here is pressed, poured, and sold, never felt, never sung. And Dionysus, he notices. His tiger's paws crush a few grapes as they step forward. He dismounts slowly, robes fluttering. His feet are bare. His hands are stained not with blood, but juice. He dips one finger into a nearby vat of fermenting wine, tastes it, winces. Too clean, too controlled, too sour. You can feel the tension crackle. The villagers shift uneasily. One brave soul approaches, offering a cup. Dionysus accepts it, but doesn't drink. Instead, he says, "This wine forgot its laughter," and pours it into the soil. Someone gasps. Someone else runs. But he's not angry. Not yet. He walks between the vines, brushing each leaf like an old friend he hasn't seen since spring. Some plants bend toward him. Others seem to straighten. The tiger waits at the edge, tail twitching. And then he smiles. Not a smirk, not a grin. Something gentler, something ancient. He plants his staff wrapped in ivy, crowned in pine into the soil, and the vineyard shivers. Within minutes, the vines begin to twist, not wildly, not violently, but like they've remembered they're alive. New leaves burst from old stems. Grapes swell with color too deep to describe. The air thickens with sweetness. You can almost hear the vines breathe, stretching for music, for meaning. Dionysus sits cross-legged in the grass and begins to hum. Low, rhythmic, not a song, not yet. Just a tone that travels through the roots and into the fruit. The villagers watch, paralyzed between reverence and confusion. Someone whispers, "Is he blessing us?" Another mutters, "Or cursing." Historians still debate what the original Dionysian rites truly involved: wine. Yes, but also theater, masks, firelight, perhaps even madness. But always, always joy, not simple happiness, not pleasure. Joy, the kind that breaks walls and binds strangers. And that joy, it's growing. A flute starts playing somewhere. You don't know who brought it. The sound just happens, spiraling around the vineyard like wind. The tiger sways. Dionysus rises, and with a voice both quiet and thunderous, he says, "This place forgot how to celebrate." Then he lifts his cup again, and this time he drinks. The taste changes mid-swallow. His smile grows wider, and so does the story. The cup is empty now, but the god is not. You can see it in his posture, loose, electric, like someone stepping into a dance they've done 1,000 times. He walks the rows of the vineyard like a conductor, each vine rising as if in anticipation of its cue. And you follow, barely breathing, because you know something is happening, something mythic, ridiculous, and maybe a little dangerous. One by one, the villagers start to move, not in protest, not in panic, in rhythm. It starts with a young man tapping the side of a barrel. Then an older woman claps twice and sways. And then, without ceremony, someone laughs. Not politely, not nervously, a real laugh. From the belly, the kind of laugh you get when something finally breaks gently and lets the air back in. Dionysus nods. "Better," he says. The tiger curls at the edge of the vineyard, watching. It blinks slowly, as if it's seen this before. Maybe it has. Maybe the tiger has been to dozens of vineyards, watched dozens of villages forget and then remember joy. Or maybe the tiger is joy. Historians still debate what the tiger symbolizes. Was it luxury, Eastern conquest, the untamed wildness of the soul. All of them, none of them. But standing here, in the warm light, it feels simpler. The tiger is what comes when you invite the god and don't expect him to walk. Meanwhile, the vines are changing. They've grown too fast, too much. One vine slithers up a post, breaks it, and twists into a spiral. Another hangs heavy with grapes the size of fists. You touch one, it's warm, almost humming. The juice bursts out when you squeeze it, staining your hands purple and sticky. And then the goat arrives, just a goat, but with garlands around its horns and a look in its eyes like it knows it's late to the party. Pan follows, or someone like him, hooves clacking on stone, pipes slung over his shoulder, a beard full of leaves. He nods to Dionysus like they're old friends who haven't argued in months. Music starts, this time, not from nowhere. The pipes call out, and the vines listen. They shudder, stretch, recoil, and bloom again. The villagers move with them. There's no fear now, just awe. A few people begin dancing, not rehearsed, not elegant, but alive. Someone trips over a basket. Someone else stumbles laughing into the wine press. It's working. Dionysus watches, pleased but not smug. His hand rests lightly on the tiger's head, as if grounding himself. The god wears a leopard skin cloak today, draped lazily over one shoulder. Beneath it, a robe that shifts colors depending on the angle of the light gold, then plum, then something like sunset. Around his neck hangs a string of ivy, still green despite the heat. On his head, the thyrsus staff. You think, of course he looks like that. He has to. There's a reason his followers call him twice born. Not just because of his strange entrance into the world, but because everything about him is dual. He's soft and terrifying, wild and kind, a rescuer and a destroyer. He offers wine that heals and wine that ruins. He brings ecstasy that frees you or breaks you. Historians still argue whether the cult of Dionysus was liberating or dangerous, whether it gave voice to the oppressed, or simply allowed people to misbehave under divine license. But here, today, in this vineyard that forgot how to laugh, he's exactly what they need. He steps up to the largest barrel, dips his hand, and throws the wine into the air. It doesn't splash, it arcs, and the moment it lands, the grapes burst into louder color. The vines shake. Someone faints. Someone else shouts a prayer they didn't know they remembered. This is no longer just a vineyard. It's a temple. You look around and realize no altar has been built, because this is the offering. Not a lamb, not gold, not incense. Joy, unapologetic, unmeasured, irrational joy. And somewhere, beneath the laughter and pipe music and trampled grapes, the tiger purrs. Because something has finally been restored. Not faith, not order, just the right kind of chaos. By midday, the vineyard is unrecognizable. The orderly rows have collapsed into tangled knots of grapevines. Twisted like dancers mid-spin, leaves tremble from invisible winds. The air smells like overripe fruit, sweat, laughter, and something else, something older. You inhale and taste it on your tongue. Possibility. You're sitting now, barefoot and flushed, beside a half-drained barrel. The tiger has wandered off, leaving a few paw prints pressed into the dirt like divine graffiti. Dionysus reclines against a basket of grapes, one leg over the other, as if this entire transformation has barely required his effort. He's humming again. A different tune now, slower, softer. This time, it's not a summons. It's a lullaby. The villagers move like they've been walking for hours in someone else's dream. Some lie down in the grass. Some sway with closed eyes. One man has climbed a tree for no reason except to nap on a branch. It's all very Dionysian. You'd think this was the end of the story. But no, Dionysus is just getting started. He gestures, and someone brings him a cup. Not a simple one. It's carved. painted, impossibly old. You wonder where it came from. You wonder if it's always been here, just waiting to be used again. He dips the cup in a basin of wine and holds it up to the light. It glows, and then, quietly, he begins to speak. Not in booming prophecy, not in riddles, just words, soft and conversational, like a friend whispering secrets you're not sure you want to hear. You know, he says, wine is a kind of madness. You nod. He smiles. But not all madness is equal. He tells the story of how he first discovered fermentation, how grapes left in the sun turned sweet, how he tasted them and forgot where he was, how, in forgetting, he remembered everything that mattered. Laughter, release, music, tears. He tells of dancing with nymphs under falling leaves, of vines creeping across his skin like living memory, of turning sorrow into song, and then of silence, of losing himself for years in distant lands, of being driven mad by Hera's hatred, of forgetting his name, his purpose, his form, how he wandered the world in disguise, more shadow than God. Historians still argue whether these tales reflect older rituals, if Dionysus's madness is symbolic of spiritual transformation or literal psychological unraveling. But when he tells it, it doesn't feel symbolic. It feels true. Sometimes, he says, you have to lose yourself completely to be worthy of returning. You glance at the villagers, some nodding, some asleep, one chasing their hat in slow circles, and realize they're not just partying, they're shedding, not just rules, but masks, burdens, names. Even the vineyard seems lighter. A woman near the fire throws her shoes into the vines. Someone else sings a lullaby in a language no one knows. Another person weeps not from grief, but because the grapes are so beautiful. You don't laugh. You understand. The wine here isn't just a drink. It's a medium, a passage, a softening of the skin between who you are and who you might be. You sip from a nearby cup. It tastes different now. More than just fruit. It tastes like music, like absence, like a smile pressed between tears. Dionysus watches you, and for a moment, the vineyard is silent. Then he lifts his hand. The tiger returns, not roaring, not striding, just walking, calm, golden, terrible in its quietness. It curls beside him. He pets it once, like someone patting a drum just before the first beat. And then he says, now let's see who remembers how to truly drink. It begins with a single cup, not handed, but offered. Dionysus holds it out, open-palmed, letting the sunlight catch in the wine and scatter red across the grass. A young man steps forward to take it, hesitates, and then drinks. He coughs once, then laughs, then collapses into a pile of grape skins, grinning like he's just seen the sky for the first time. The god chuckles softly. Next. And so the drinking begins, but not like a party, not like the awkward, over-loud clinking of mortal feasts. This is ritual, sacred and absurd at the same time. Every sip feels choreographed. Every stumble is part of the dance. You try to count the cups. You lose track after 7, because time starts to shift. The shadows stretch in strange directions. The wine press hums without being touched. The tiger walks slow figure eights through the vines, and no one notices its claws. Everyone's too busy swaying, laughing, sobbing, some doing all three. The grapes are now glowing, not literally, but close. You pick one and hold it up. It vibrates faintly. You bite it. It tastes like something between honey and thunder. You turn to the god. Dionysus is standing now, arms outstretched, face raised to the sky. He's not speaking. He's inviting, and the vines answer. They twist toward him. Some wrap gently around ankles, wrists, not to trap, to dance. The villagers follow, stumbling, singing, some tearing at their own clothing like ivy that never fit. You watch a woman step onto a barrel and begin to chant a song you're certain no one's taught her. Her voice is cracked and radiant. A man pours wine on the roots of the vineyard, saying, "Let them drink too." Dionysus smiles, the tiger yawns, and the whole vineyard shivers. Historians still argue what Dionysian ritual really looked like. Some say masks, drums, ecstatic trance. Others claim that was Roman exaggeration, wine-drenched scandal more than worship. But here, now, it's neither nor both. It's something older, something that doesn't care how history will label it. Someone begins to dance in a circle, trailing grapevines like ribbons. Another follows. Then 3, then 7. Soon the vineyard is spinning. And you feel it too. Not drunk, not dizzy, but opened. Like a window that's been shut too long suddenly finds the breeze. You look down at your feet. Purple-stained. Rooted. You sway. You forget who you were before the god arrived. And it doesn't scare you. It feels right. You catch glimpses. A flute carved from bone. Wine bubbling without heat. A goat braying in rhythm with a drum beat you can't hear. Dionysus lifts his staff, and a crown of ivy uncoils from the tip, blooming as it descends. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. This is what he came for. Not to punish, not to boast, to remind. The villagers thought they were making wine, but they were only pressing grapes. Now, they're making something divine, or being made by it. You close your eyes and let the music, the scent, the warmth pour over you, and somewhere, beneath the vines, the earth hums more. The sun is lower now, tilting everything golden. Shadows stretch like wine spilled across a table, long and uneven. The air hangs heavy, not with heat, but with presence. You feel it in your bones, in the soil beneath your toes, in the way the vines whisper even when the wind is still. Dionysus stands at the edge of the vineyard, watching, not in judgment, in recognition. The villagers have surrendered to it. Some lie in the grass, weeping softly. Others dance without music, limbs loose, untethered from shame. A few sit in tight circles, whispering truths they've never said aloud, their voices trembling with release. You walk among them. One woman is covered in grape pulp, head to toe, smiling like she's just woken from 100 years' sleep. A boy is reciting poetry in a tongue older than Greek. A group has formed a conga line with the tiger trailing behind, occasionally swatting the slowest participant with its tail. It's all ridiculous and deeply sacred. The god of this chaos, barefoot, robes dusted with crushed fruit, laughs, but not cruelly, not mockingly. It's the laugh of someone who remembers what it's like to forget, who's been lost, been found, and knows the exact weight of both. He walks now, slowly, among the vines. As he passes, the grapes quiver, the soil seems to breathe. One vine curls gently around his wrist. He strokes it absent-mindedly. Someone offers him a new cup. He declines. "You don't drink at your own funeral," he says. Someone laughs, unsure, but you understand, because something is ending. Not the party, the pattern. This village had forgotten joy, forgotten awe, forgotten to be ridiculous. Dionysus didn't bring wine to get them drunk. He brought wine to break the dam. And now, the flood has passed. What's left? Stillness and something like healing. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a liberator or a corrupter, whether his rites were spiritual release or dangerous escapism, but no one argues about the vineyard anymore, because it has changed. You feel it in your fingertips as you touch a leaf. It's warmer, softer, a little too alive, and maybe watching you back. The tiger lies in the middle of a footpath, tail flicking lazily. A child naps against its side. No one dares move them. The gods guard their own. Dionysus sits once more, this time cross-legged on a wine barrel that leaks a faint red line down its side. He hums, low and slow, and the sound settles over the field like a blanket. You sit near him. He doesn't speak, but his presence wraps around you like ivy, comforting, coiling, lightly intoxicating. You ask him quietly why the tiger. He doesn't look at you, but he answers, because horses walk in straight lines. And that's it. No riddle, no myth. Just that, because a god who deals in madness doesn't travel predictable roads. He needs claws, stripes, teeth that smile when they shouldn't. He needs the tiger. You nod, and the god, perhaps approving, reaches into a bowl and tosses a handful of grapes into the sky. They don't fall. They just scatter, becoming stars. Maybe, or maybe you're just drunk. Either way, you lean back in the grass, and for the first time in a long time, you don't need a reason. Somewhere between the vines and the stars, you fall asleep. Not the kind of sleep you drift into, the kind that claims you, deep, unworried, full of purple shadows and green laughter. And when you wake, the world has tilted slightly, just enough for the vineyard to feel more like a memory than a place. The music is gone. The villagers sleep where they fell, wrapped in ivy, curls of vine gently clinging to hair and wrists. A man wakes briefly, sits up, murmurs a joke to a nearby goat, and falls back asleep. The tiger is still there. So is Dionysus, perched on the edge of a toppled barrel, twirling a grape between his fingers, watching the horizon like he's waiting for something. Or someone. You sit up slowly. The sky is painted with early pinks and faint silver clouds. It smells like crushed berries in morning. Dionysus looks over at you. You dreamt, he asks. You nod. You're not sure what the dream was, but it's still clinging to your ribs. He smiles. Good. Dreams are proof that the wine worked. You blink at that, then laugh. Just once. He doesn't, because for Dionysus, wine isn't about drinking. Not really. It's about crossing over from order into chaos, from sense into something more tender. It's about giving permission to feel without filter, grieve without question, celebrate without clarity. He tosses the grape into his mouth, chews thoughtfully, then sighs. This vineyard, he says, was asleep. You look around. It still is. But something beneath the surface now buzzes. The leaves are too green, the soil too warm. You feel it under your fingertips, the pulse of something that has woken up and doesn't want to go back to sleep. And you realize Dionysus didn't come here for worship. He came to rewild it, to make the grapes remember that they once grew tangled and free, that they weren't always trimmed and tied, that their juice wasn't always diluted into currency. He made them wild again. Historians still argue if vineyards were ever part of Dionysian rites, or if that connection came later, through Roman reinterpretation and festival overlays. But standing here, barefoot, surrounded by vines curling like question marks, you know, the answer doesn't matter, because the story is true. If not in fact, then in feeling. You help someone to their feet. They blink, bleary, and say they dreamt they were a grape, crushed, aged, poured, drunk, and then reborn as laughter. You don't question it. Another person has woven a crown from vine and offers it to Dionysus. He bows low, lets them place it on his head. He does not become more regal. He becomes more himself. And then he laughs, a full laugh open, unapologetic. So loud a cluster of grapes falls from a nearby vine in surprise. It's the kind of sound that cracks the day wide open. And just like that, the vineyard shifts again. The vines straighten slightly, as if exhaling. The grapes stop glowing. The tiger rises, stretches, and yawns so wide you glimpse something like stars in its throat. The party is over, but the magic, it lingers. You press your palm to a vine one last time. It doesn't wrap around you now. It just holds, softly, thankfully, and somewhere, far off, the first sounds of a flute echo again, not wild, not summoning, just a farewell. The vines are calmer now, no more pulsing, no more curling around ankles like ivy with the pinions. Just rose again, still tangled, still lush, but with that peaceful exhaustion that follows a truly good dream. You walk slowly between them, barefoot, the dew cold against your toes. Dionysus walks beside you. No tiger, no thunder, just footsteps. You're not sure if this is the same god who rode in like a carnival float on claws. This Dionysus is quiet, thoughtful, running one hand through the leaves like he's trying to remember something, or trying not to. You reach the center of the vineyard, the press. It's been transformed, not by fire or flood, but by joy. The ground around it is sticky with juice, splashed in constellations across the stones. The press itself looks broken, but happy. Someone painted a smile on one of the barrels. It's crooked. You both sit. For a while, he says nothing. And then, wine doesn't last, Dionysus says. Not the way people want it to. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. It ages. It turns. It forgets. Sometimes it remembers. But mostly, it becomes something else. You think about that. You ask if that's what he did to the vineyard helped it become something else. He looks up at the sky, then back at you. I just reminded it what it was. He picks up a half-full cup from the press and swirls it gently. The wine inside catches the light and turns the color of bruised peaches. You know, he adds, most gods don't change things. They judge them, they reward, or they punish, but they don't walk in and dance with it all. He drinks, and for a moment, he's just a man. Then he smiles. You ever seen a priest laugh until he falls over? You shake your head. Exactly. He says, historians still argue whether Dionysus was ever fully accepted among the Olympians. Some say he was a late addition. Others claim he earned his throne through madness alone. But the myths don't show a courtroom victory. They show celebration. They show a return. The god who wandered came back and rode a tiger straight into the heart of the story. You ask if the tiger has a name. He smirks, not one you could pronounce. Fair. A soft wind moves through the vines. They rustle, but it doesn't feel ominous. Just a sigh, a slow exhale after too much holding in. You realize then the vineyard hasn't just changed. The people have. Somewhere behind you, someone sings again. Not loud, just a little tune, and someone else picks it up. Then another. The rhythm returns like a tide not crashing, but persistent. It wraps around you both as Dionysus rises. He stretches, cracks his neck, looks down at you. I leave before they start worshiping. You stand, unsure what to say. He pats your shoulder. You stayed through the whole thing, he says, even the weird parts. You nod. You'll remember it better than they will. And then he walks off. Not dramatically, just away. You glance around. The vineyard is still, the people slowly returning to themselves, happier, looser, maybe a little confused. The tiger is gone too, vanished. Like a story you can almost remember but can't retell without sounding ridiculous. You smile, because ridiculous might be sacred, and sacred might just ride in on soft paws, with wine on its breath. The cleanup begins with laughter, not the forced kind, not polite, the kind that bursts out unexpectedly. Someone finds a sandal in a grape press. Someone else realizes they've been wearing a garland of leek leaves, not ivy. No one minds. The villagers are moving slowly now, the way you do after waking from a nap you didn't mean to take, but desperately needed. You join them. The vineyard, once pulsing with divine energy, is calm now, but not empty. There's something new in the soil, or maybe something very old, root deep and stirring. You feel it when your hand brushes a vine. It doesn't grab you this time. It greets you. as if saying, "We remember now." Someone starts sweeping crushed grapes into a pile. Another tries to repair the shattered lid of a wine barrel with twine and stubborn optimism. A child climbs into the press, declares it a juice throne, and is immediately declared king. No one argues. You find a cluster of villagers gathered around a strange set of footprints too big for a man, too soft for a goat. The tiger, its path leads away from the vineyard, toward the forest. Not rushed, just onward. Someone wonders aloud if it'll come back. Someone else says it never left. You say nothing, because the tiger didn't belong to the god. It was the god, or at least the part of him that couldn't sit still, that couldn't walk, that needed to arrive like a warning and leave like a whisper. Historians still debate whether the tiger myth came from the East, tied to Dionysus's so-called Indian campaign, a tale of conquest where vines sprouted in sand and wild beasts bowed to wine. But standing here, watching those tracks fade into grass, it feels less like conquest and more like communion. The tiger didn't come to claim the vineyard. It came to remind it what it was for. You help patch the press. You untangle a woman's hair from a vine. You find your own shoes, impossibly far from where you remember leaving them. And as you slip them on, you feel the dirt cling to your soles. It doesn't want you to forget. A few elders gather at the center of the vineyard, where Dionysus first planted his staff. The ground there is still warm, still soft. Someone suggests placing a stone there, a marker, not to worship, just to remember. You offer a small carved token from your pouch, something you don't even recall bringing. It looks like a face, or a mask, or maybe just a grape squinting in the sun. It fits. The elders nod. One of them places a vine around it. Another pours a few drops of wine. The gesture feels quiet, perfect, unforced. Later, someone suggests a feast, not a ritual, not a rite, just food and rest. People gather under grape-draped trees and pass bowls of cheese, olives, leftover stew. A cup of wine is shared, but no one drinks too deeply. The lesson isn't forgotten. Dionysus brought more than indulgence. He brought balance, excess and restraint, madness and memory. You hear someone ask, "Do you think he'll come back?" Someone else says, "Maybe he never left." And you think of the way the tiger blinked at the sky, and you wonder if the god isn't waiting in every grape that ripens a little too early. That night, the vineyard sleeps, but not deeply. The vines still move in their dreams. The soil still hums, and the villagers, scattered under blankets and moonlight, murmur strange phrases in their sleep. You walk through it all quietly, the grass cold under your feet, the scent of crushed grapes still lingering in the air like the end of a song. You stop by the stone marker. The mask-shaped token you left now glows faintly in the moonlight. Not magically, just enough to look like it remembers being held by divine hands. You sit. For a while, nothing happens. And then soft hoofbeats. Not the tiger. Fun. Or something like him. A figure with horns, bare feet, and laughter stuck to his skin like pollen. He doesn't speak, just raises a cup in greeting, then vanishes into the vines, pipes trailing a tune that doesn't quite resolve. You smile. The gods are still around, just less interested in being seen. In the morning, the vineyard is cleaner. Someone's swept, someone's stacked barrels. A path has been cleared from the press to the road. There's no announcement, no meeting, but everyone knows what's happening. It's time to return, to towns, to routines, to gods who stay on altars. But not you. You linger. One last look through the vines, one last touch to the soil. The tiger's paw prints are gone. The wind erased them, or maybe the vines did, but you remember. Historians still argue what happened to Dionysian rites, whether they were banned, absorbed, transformed into theater and myth. But you've seen the truth. They were never meant to stay in temples. They were meant to visit, to arrive in tigers and wine and music that doesn't make sense until you stop trying to understand it. You walk to the edge of the vineyard, pause, and for no reason at all, you whisper thank you. A vine twitches in reply. You laugh, and you leave. Not drunk, not dazed, just open. You know now, joy isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. And the tiger, you'll hear him again someday, not in a roar, but in the sudden laughter of a stranger, in a vine that grows the wrong way, in a sip of wine that tastes like too much. When you do, don't be afraid. That's not chaos. That's Dionysus. The road away from the vineyard winds like a story told too many times, full of pauses, loops, and places where the narrator forgot how it ended. You walk slowly, head full of echo and sweetness. Behind you, the vines breathe without you. Ahead, the world waits, normal and paved. But you aren't the same. You pass olive groves. A shepherd waves. A cart creaks by. Life continues, but in your pocket. You've slipped a single grape from the divine harvest. It's wrinkled now, almost dried. But you can't bring yourself to eat it. Not yet. You sleep in a wayside inn that night. The bed is hard. The room smells like oil and dust. The walls don't sing. You miss the vines. In the morning, you hear travelers at breakfast speaking of a rumor, some strange festival in a vineyard to the east. People dancing, a wild man with a flute. Someone swears they saw a tiger. You keep your smile small. Let the rumor travel on without correction, because the truth of Dionysus isn't in confirming, it's in feeling, and the ones who need him will know him when the vines begin to hum. You head south now, toward the coast. The air sharpens, salt replaces sweet. You pass vineyards that seem perfectly normal, neat, measured, indifferent. You stop in one, run your hand across a vine. Nothing. You keep walking, but that night, while sitting by the sea, you dream of a parade, not Roman, not official, just a procession of people you remember laughing, stained with wine, swaying in the moonlight. The god rides past again. The tiger looks at you, doesn't blink. You wake up with your heart full of something wordless. Historians say Dionysus was a contradiction, a god of madness and clarity, of life and death, of ecstasy and exhaustion. But maybe he was just necessary, because there's only so long you can hold yourself together before you need to fall apart. And only so long you can fall apart before you need to be held by something wild. You spend the next day drawing spirals in the sand. No one asks why. You don't explain. But when a child walks past and copies your spirals with a stick of driftwood, you smile, because something's already starting again. Somewhere, someone will forget joy, and somewhere, a tiger will start walking. You walk inland again, away from the sea, pulled not by duty or map, but by something in your ribs that feels like music without sound, a tug, soft and steady. You pass dry fields, stone temples, old statues that pretend not to watch. At a dusty crossroads, you meet a man selling jugs of wine. He offers you a taste. You sip. It's good structured, herbal, aged in amphora, that smell of tradition. But there's no pulse in it, no laughter. You thank him and move on. That night, you camp beneath fig trees, the stars blinking through the leaves like the flicker of a watchful eye. You dream again of vines, of barefoot dancing, of a cup passed hand to hand without ever spilling. In the dream, the tiger sleeps beside you like a fire curled into stripes. When you wake, the earth smells faintly of grapes. You dig a little and find a root, thin, twisting, alive. Here, you smile, because maybe it's spreading, not the ritual. The reminder, Dionysus didn't stay behind. He planted himself. Historians still argue whether he was real, a personification, or a metaphor too wild to ignore. But they rarely ask the real question: why do people keep calling him back? Because somewhere, always, someone has pressed too hard into order, into duty, into being good, and when they do, something inside them cracks just enough to let a vine through. You see it in a market square 2 towns over, a woman selling wine with berries still floating in it. She calls it dream juice. You try it. It's awful, but she smiles like she knows a secret. You ask her where she learned to make it. She shrugs. Felt right. You nod. The god leaves footprints in instinct, in foolish recipes, in laughter that escapes at funerals. You visit a ruined amphitheater, crumbled columns, broken steps, moss climbing up everything. You sit in the center, whisper a line of poetry, and the wind answers with a breath so full of grapes you almost cry. You laugh instead. You think of the villagers in the vineyard, their awkwardness, their surrender, their grace. You miss them, not for what they gave you, but for what they let themselves be. You stand, stretch, and walk on, because joy isn't meant to be kept. It's meant to be carried. By now, your feet know where to go, even if your mind doesn't. You move through small towns where people nod politely and never raise their voices. Markets full of symmetrical fruit. Roads so straight they look carved by geometry itself. And yet, at night, something's different. The moon feels closer. The dreams more vivid. You find yourself humming songs you never learned. You catch yourself smiling at vines that lean just slightly toward you. Something is following you. Not the tiger, not Dionysus himself, but the aftertaste of him. You stay one evening in a village wrapped in hills, where the wine is clean and sharp and utterly forgettable. The locals invite you to a small festival, candles, soft music, fruit piled in baskets like offerings no one remembers how to give. You attend, you watch, and when someone clinks a glass and says, "Let's keep things respectable tonight," you feel it. The lack, the ache beneath the order. You excuse yourself, step outside, and walk into the vineyards alone. It's cold, quiet, too quiet. You kneel, press your palm to the soil, close your eyes, and say nothing, but something hears you, because a minute later, a breeze stirs the vines, then another, a shiver ripples down the rows, and from somewhere in the dark, a single grape falls and lands in your hand. You don't eat it. You plant it, right there. Historians still argue about the symbols: grapes, leopards, ivy, tigers, masks, but they miss the motion. Dionysus never sits still. His worship was not built to last in temples. It was built to return. You whisper, "You're welcome here," and the vines lean closer. Later that night, someone wakes from a dream and starts humming. A child laughs in their sleep. A barrel in a cellar cracks open just slightly, and no one knows why. You leave before morning, not because you're done, but because he's not. He's moving again, and you're just ahead of him. The next town isn't on any map you've seen. It's tucked into a valley, shadowed by cliffs, reachable only by a footpath the goats seem to understand better than you do. You arrive at dusk, your cloak dusted with pine needles and your thoughts warm with too many memories. This place is quiet, but not dead, the kind of quiet that waits. You hear no music yet, but the fields surrounding the village are full of grapes, wild, unpruned, tangled like hair left to grow without mirrors. You see farmers with stained hands and tired eyes. You see barrels stacked by sellers with vines curling toward them like they want a second chance. You feel it in your spine. Dionysus has been here, or is coming, or maybe both. You ask an old man at the well if there's ever been a festival here. He says, "Not in years," then adds, after a pause, "But sometimes the wine bubbles by itself." You nod. Of course it does. That night, you walk the vineyard paths. The soil is soft, the air sweet, You pass a pile of discarded pruning shears, rusted, half swallowed by the earth. No one prunes anymore. Because why would they? Here, the vines have taken over, and the villagers, while cautious, haven't stopped them. There's a quiet agreement in this valley. The grapes know what they're doing. You sit beneath a trellis and watch the moon rise. It's round, full, slightly too large, as if leaning in to listen. Then you hear it, a flute, far off, faint, just one note, bending in the air like steam from a full cup. Then a drum, just once, then silence. It's starting again. Historians call this spontaneous cult revival. They treat it like a sociological event. But what if it's not revival? What if it's memory? What if the land never forgot? You stay in the village a few more days. People begin to hum again. Someone leaves a jug of wine by the vineyard gate, not sold, not labeled, just left, and someone else drinks it, not from thirst, from invitation. You smile. You don't say anything. You just walk the rows, touching vines, remembering, and every so often, one leans toward you, just slightly, as if to say, "We know where the tiger walked." The hills behind the village call to you like an old joke you're finally ready to hear. You climb early, before sunrise, stepping over roots and loose stones, the kind of path where silence keeps pace with your footsteps. The air is cold, crisp, and sweet, like it remembers the first crush of grapes. At the summit, you find a circle of standing stones, worn, weathered, forgotten by history, but not by time. You sit in the center. It smells faintly of wine and wildflowers. The grass here grows in spirals, and the wind never moves in straight lines. You close your eyes. You don't have to call him. He's already here. You feel it like warmth at your back, the faint pressure of being observed, not with judgment, but with curiosity, like the gaze of a tiger too lazy to pounce and too wise to pretend it might. You speak aloud. You don't plan it. Was it a warning? You ask, or a gift? The wind answers in grape-skin laughter, and then silence. You reach into your satchel and pull out that one shriveled grape you've been carrying, the one from his vineyard. You place it on the earth inside the stone circle, and you wait. You don't expect it to sprout, but it does. A thin, green shoot uncurls slow, unsure, soft as breath. It trembles, then rises. You stare, a little afraid, a little amazed, and completely unsurprised. Historians write about symbols, followers, sacrifices, rituals, but none of them mention what you feel now, the hush of being watched by joy itself, because he is joy, not the easy kind, the kind that scares you into remembering what matters, the kind that arrives on clawed paws when life becomes too tight. You stay until the wind shifts, and then you walk back down the hill, back to the village, where the vines are humming again, where the wine tastes different, where the people are quieter now, but not in mourning, in respect, because Dionysus came, not in wrath, not in glory, but in reminder, and that's more than enough. The path you walk now is older than roads, no paving stones, no markers, just grooves in the earth carved by centuries of bare feet, following something they couldn't explain, something that sang without words, laughed without a mouth, and sometimes arrived on a tiger wearing nothing but ivy and the scent of crushed grapes. You're following it again, not to reach him, but to stay close, close to the pulse that never really leaves once it touches you. You pass through another village, smaller than the last. No vineyards, no temples. Just a handful of homes leaning against each other like old friends. You ask for water at the well. A woman hands you a cup, looks at the grapevine charm on your wrist, the one someone wove into your sleep weeks ago, and says, "We used to celebrate." Then she looks away, and you know, Dionysus hasn't been here in a while. But maybe that's about to change. You walk behind the village where a fallow field stretches wide. No crops, just wind. And in the center, a dead tree twisted, blackened, striking against the pale sky like a forgotten note in a silent song. You walk to it. You sit. You press your hand to the dirt. It's cold, then warm, and you smile. Historians still debate whether Dionysus truly symbolized rebirth or simply served as escape, whether his madness healed or harmed. But they always miss what you feel in this soil, the possibility of return, not resurrection. Rewilding. Later, you share your bread with a group of children. They don't speak much, but one of them starts humming. You recognize the tune. You've heard it before. In the vines, in the press, in your dreams. You hum with them, and slowly, the others join in. An old man walks by and frowns, but then just faintly he taps the rhythm with his walking stick, and the ground seems to lean forward. Just a little. You sleep that night beneath the stars, your head on your pack, your heart too full to rest properly. But you close your eyes, and you hear hoofbeats, not loud, not close, but coming. By morning, the field has changed. The tree is still dead, still twisted, but the air around it feels warmer, lighter, like the soil is remembering. You walk barefoot through the grass and feel something shift under your heel. A root, maybe, or a rhythm. A child brings you a grape. Where did they find it? There are no vines here. You don't ask. You take it gently, hold it in your palm. It's small, imperfect, but alive. And that's enough. You offer it to the earth, burying it in a shallow divot beside the tree, not as an offering, not as a ceremony, just because Dionysus always returns where he's invited. You leave the village quietly, no procession, no fanfare, just a nod to the woman at the well, who nods back as if to say, "We'll see." You travel alone again. Along the ridge, you spot a crumbling amphora half buried in the dirt. You lift it out, brush it clean. The paint is faded, but you recognize the shape, a man riding a cat, not a lion, not a panther, a tiger. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because it confirms everything. Someone else saw it too. You carry the amphora until dusk, then leave it beside a stream. Let it find its next dreamer. That night, you camp near a grove where the trees lean toward each other like conspirators. You make a small fire, nothing dramatic, just warmth and flame and the occasional crackle like laughter in its lowest register. You sip from your flask, not much left, but enough. You raise it to the dark and say, "Here's to remembering." The wind lifts your hair, twirls the smoke, and you know he's near. Historians may never agree where the myth began. India, Thrace, Anatolia, but you know this much. It doesn't matter, because the myth didn't stay put. It walked. It still walks, in vines, in cups, in dreams where the ground pulses and someone wild smiles from the edge. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you hear it. A soft snort, a stripe of gold in the moonlight. The tiger, always just behind the veil. Not hunting, not lost, just watching. You wake to paw prints in the ash. Not clear, not sharp. Just the faint impression of something heavy and padded, moving close in the night. They don't circle. They pass through, as if the tiger came only to check on you. You smile and pack your things. The next village is different. Whitewashed homes, neatly swept streets. Everyone nods politely, but their eyes dart. Their wine is stored in tall, narrow jugs with perfect seals. You drink it. It tastes like memory that's been filtered too many times. You ask if there's a vineyard nearby. They say no, but you notice a small, overgrown field behind the chapel. Grape leaves curling over a crumbled stone wall. The vines there are wild, untended, thick with silence. You walk among them. One vine brushes your hand. It's not friendly, not unfriendly either, just aware. You kneel and hum softly, the same tune you heard in the God's vineyard. The vine stiffens, then it relaxes. You're not here to fix it. You're here to listen. A few villagers gather, watching. One child says, "That vine used to dance." The mother hushes them, eyes wary. You nod. "It still can." That night, the moon rises full again. You light no fire. You sit beneath the vines and wait. And sure enough, a breeze picks up. Then another. The leaves shimmer. And far off, barely audible, you hear pipes. Historians still debate whether Dionysian music was structured or spontaneous, whether it followed form or followed feeling. But when the pipes echo under a full moon and the vines sway like old hips at a forgotten feast, the answer is obvious. It's not about composition. It's about permission. You whisper a blessing to the vines. They don't respond, but you know they heard you. The next morning, one of the villagers hands you a bunch of grapes. You didn't ask. They say nothing, but you notice their hands are stained purple, and their eyes don't dart anymore. You carry the grapes with care, because they're not just fruit. They're proof that joy can take root even in silence, and that sometimes the God doesn't arrive with a tiger. Sometimes he comes on foot, through people like you. It's nearly dusk when you find the stone road again. Not the neat one from maps or kings. This one is older, worn smooth by sandals and hooves, by dances and escapes. A path shaped by movement that didn't ask for permission. You walk it slowly. Each step feels like a drumbeat, not yours, not from this world, but beneath it, as if the ground still hums with the sound of 1,000 feasts, 1,000 cups raised, 1,000 names shouted in laughter. You don't know where you're going. You don't care, because now you understand Dionysus never gave directions. He gave permission to be strange, to be joyful, to be overwhelmed and completely, beautifully undone. You reach a meadow as the last light spills gold across the hills. In the center stands a cart, abandoned. Broken wheels, empty casks, but scattered around it grapes, dozens, crushed, fermenting, forgotten. You kneel. The scent is familiar, sweet, sharp, a little dangerous. You smile and sit in the grass. You take one grape, press it between your fingers, and feel it pop. Juice stains your palm. You lick it. It tastes like the first time you dared to feel too much and didn't apologize. That night, you build no fire. You lie beneath the stars, and you wait, not because you're expecting him, but because you know he always comes back. You fall asleep to wind and distant music, and in your dream, you walk beside him again. His robes trail ivy. His tiger yawns. He says nothing, but when he glances your way, you know he remembers. Historians might call it myth, but you've danced it. You've tasted it. You've walked the vineyard, and in your pocket, a single grape remains, not eaten, not buried, just held, like a secret the world needs again, like a reminder that life isn't meant to be endured, it's meant to be savored. The final stretch of your journey leads to a hillside overlooking the valley. From here, you see vineyards sprawled like stories across the land, some tidy, some unruly, some still waking up. You sit beneath a fig tree, its branches heavy with fruit, and you breathe. It's quiet, but not the kind of quiet that comes from absence, the kind that follows a symphony and waits for the next note. You reach into your pouch and pull out the grape you've carried all this way, wrinkled now, toughened, a little like you. You hold it in your palm and think of everything it has seen. A tiger, a god, a village turned temple, a field turned memory. And you've been witness, not priest, not prophet, just present, which, in the world of Dionysus, is all that's ever asked. You rise, walk to the edge of the hill, and plant the grape in the earth. No one sees, no one claps, but the wind changes, just slightly, like something exhaling after a long wait. Historians still write their books. They'll argue the rites, debate the rituals, search for the tiger in sculpture and scroll. But they'll miss this, that you carried it. The story, the spark, the sweetness, and the surrender. And you'll keep carrying it, in the way you laugh more easily now, in the way you stir your wine with your finger, not a spoon, in the way you look at vines and expect them to hum. You stay on the hillside until dusk. When the stars begin to blink into the sky, you hear something far below hooves. Laughter, pipes, or maybe just your memory playing games again. But you smile, because you know better now. Dionysus doesn't fade. He waits, and when the world forgets joy, he returns, maybe on a chariot, maybe in a bottle, maybe on a tiger's back, purring like thunder. And when he does, you'll know him. You'll rise, and you'll say, I remember the vineyard. And now, the vines are quiet. The god has gone. The wine has settled. The tiger, if it was ever really there, walks somewhere in your dreams, its paws soft, its breath warm, its eyes full of patient knowing. You lie beneath a night sky so still it hums. The air is thick with the scent of old grapes, of fire gone cold, of memories softened by distance. You are full now, not with food, not with wine, with reminder that life isn't only duty, that joy isn't something to earn, that sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is laugh too loudly or dance too badly or cry at nothing, because to feel, truly feel, is to honor the chaos we came from. You breathe in and let it out slowly. The vines are still now, but deep below the soil, they remember, and so do you. The music has faded, the feast is over, but the taste remains on your tongue, in your chest, in that small, stubborn grape you buried when no one was watching. Sleep now. Let the soil hold your dreams. Let the god walk elsewhere for a while. He'll return. He always does. But for now, you are safe. You are still. You are part of the story. And somewhere, a tiger blinks and waits